Welcome to another CardFellas Shorty. This is more hobby talk, just a shorter version of it. I'm Matt, he's Chris. And Chris, we're going to talk today about the state of the hobby where we see it, or the soul of the hobby, if you will. And we're also going to talk about a card that we talked about previously on a show, and I think we need a little bit more attention to it. It's the Wander Franco 2002 Topps Future Stars Club card. You brought this up, and I want you to talk a little bit more about it because I think it's interesting. And not just interesting, but some other facts and figures that I found out about this card. So we'll share our thoughts on that. But let's get into the main topic of this shorty. Let's talk about the state of the hobby as we see it now. As we're, if you're listening to us on the podcast, and maybe you're new to the podcast, or you're watching this on YouTube, we're talking about April 2022. So we're time stamping this here. It's almost May, but we've lived through a pandemic. We've lived through a hobby in the pandemic. The pandemic is winding down, but the hobby is still going on. I'm going to ask you this, Chris. In your opinion, where do you see the hobby right now?
Well, you and I think both, you got in a little bit earlier than I did, but I certainly came in right in the heart of the junk wax era in the late 80s. And a lot of the things that we're seeing, especially now, feel very similar to that. Of course, when we were collecting and kind of in our heydays, there was never a shortage. There was never a time where you went to the store and couldn't find cards, which we did have over the last few years. But now, and we've reported it here, you can find Topps Series 1 at gas stations now, and certainly at Dollar Tree and Family Dollar and those kind of places, which I think is really good, as long as that's kind of maybe the only set that Topps produces that's like that. Yes. But it feels similar to that. Obviously, there's some different things that were going on, but it does feel like we've brought a ton of people into the hobby. And that is something, you and I have talked a lot about Fanatics as well. And the person in charge there, his goal is to continue to grow the hobby. And he sees that. And I think that's very important, that we continue to grow the hobby if we want to see more cool things come in and see some of the stuff that we're interested in seeing. And you and I think in this discussion, we're going to talk about selling cards too. Yeah. And I think if we want to sell cards, and is value important, is going to be a question that we're going to answer as well. And I think it is, even by, people who are really diehard collectors and not, sellers, they still want their cards to be worth something. So if we want our cards to be worth something, we have to continue to bring more people into the hobby as well.
Absolutely, 100%. Here's kind of my quick take on where the hobby is right now. I think it's thriving still. You go to card shows, you go to card shops. People are there, and they're there in large numbers still. So the drop-off definitely hasn't happened. I think the other thing is, I think you're seeing a glut of cards, and I think you are seeing cards sales slow down. So if you have cards in your inventory that you feel like could be moving quicker and they're not, I think that's just going to become common. I think the get-rich-quick scheme people have moved on from this hobby. I think those days are gone. I think at least the quick get-rich scheme, I think you can still get rich. I still think there's an opportunity to make money in the hobby, but the idea of camping out at Target, buying all the boxes, and then selling them on eBay for 5x, those days are long gone. Getting cards graded for $4 or $8, and then flipping those cards, for 8 to 10 to 15x if they come back with a good grade, are gone. But overall, the hobby is still very strong. I think the hobby is younger. That's really fun to see. Not just, when I'm saying younger, not just kids, I'm saying just younger adults. I think people with energy, to continue to move the hobby forward. I think people are opportunistic. And I think that's always been the case. But I think there's always people, you kind of have to watch a little bit. I always think people are you trying to screw me? There's still that kind of that feeling in the hobby right now that I don't know if that was, I never felt that when I was growing up. Like you kind of always felt like you knew what your cards were worth, but I don't know. I just feel like people are, there's skepticism, if you will. And I don't know if that's just the culture that we have as a society. Is just like, I just don't trust this person. And when it comes to money, it's hard sometimes to trust. So I think people are opportunistic. I think they're skeptical. I think people are frugal. You and I have talked about this, Chris. People are frugal right now, and I think it's starting to trickle down to the hobby for sure.
Yeah, I think you brought up some good points there. And one of the other things, and you talk about people getting frugal, we're 2 years now past, when we started to do this whole lockdown thing. And, people spend a lot of time watching YouTube. And I do this all the time with my son. If we go and pick up a box somewhere, pull up YouTube and watch somebody else open that box and see what you find out. And I think, people going out and spending thousands of dollars on National Treasures boxes and then opening them on YouTube and getting $300 worth of cards, you can only show that on YouTube so many times before people go, I don't think spending thousands of dollars on National Treasures is a good idea. And, I think, I just remember going into my local card shop and just seeing, young kids laying down $1,200 for a box of Prism basketball and going, where did they get this? Where do you find this kind of money at that age to go and do that? And, going to the card shows and seeing these kids walking around with their Zion boxes and opening them up and full slabs, you're like, whoa, like, how did this happen? So it's interesting, but I think, like you said, I think that is slowing down. So for the people that, really want to go back, and it's interesting when you go online and you listen to people talk, and when you and I think of going back, we think of going back into the mid 80s maybe, but a lot of people really long for 2005, 2006, 2011, when they could go and get cards and people were not real interested in them. And I remember when you and I just kind of first jumped into this thing in early 2020, buying 2019 Topps Update with a clearance rack at Walmart. And it's like, that stuff never finds the clearance rack anymore at all.
No.
It's gone before it hits. And, you and I keep a close eye on what's happening at Target, and we always know what's been put up there. But I've been stopping at my local Walmart, and I think that the grind is still alive there, because my local Walmart is almost always clean. And there's a few that's, about 30 miles away from me. And sometimes you go in there and you'll find kind of basic stuff, but none of the kind of select and mosaic and those kind of things. I think those guys are still out there. And when they find that, and we've seen it on YouTube in the last month, they'll just clear the shelf. And Walmart doesn't care who buys it or how many they buy. It's, to them, a sale is a sale. So it's gone. And that still is occurring. But it is nice that, the way that Target sells the cards, and I think the way that Fanatics is going to sell the cards, it's going to give a lot of people an opportunity, if they want to buy retail product, that they'll be able to at a really affordable price.
I absolutely 100% agree with you on everything. And I think people are buying those boxes. I don't know what they're doing with them right now, because the secondary market is not worth the flipping. The return on that investment's not there right now. So if you buy a $20-$25 blaster box, you're selling that online for $30. I think people are either taking it home, they're opening it for pleasure, enjoyment, or they're going to snake it away and just say, this is going to be something I open at a later date. Or maybe the price goes up when grading comes down. I think there's a correlation there when it comes to wax boxes and blasters and megas. And, that was the thing. People were buying those boxes hoping to get a card that they could go send in for $12 to get graded. And then now all of a sudden your margins are really good if that card comes back at 10. So I think there's a correlation between, the rush to get wax and grading costs coming down. So as long as those grading costs stay high, I think those wax boxes are less desirable, if you will, on the secondary market. But another thing that I'm seeing, and I've heard this term thrown out, the junk slab era. And this is a term that somebody used, I think, in one of our comments, and I've heard it other places, is all of those cards that have been graded during the pandemic that have come back 9s, 8s, 7s, 6s of like 1990 Fleer, Akeem Olajuwon, PSA 8. Like, what do you do with that card? Because those are the cards that are going to be out there. Unless you're going to sell those for $5 to $10, I don't think there's going to be much of a market out there. There's going to be a lot of those sitting around. So I think there's a lot of worthless slabs that are going to be, hanging around in people's collections for a while. Or if you're a fan of Akeem Olajuwon, you could probably pick that up for $5 on eBay, stash that in your collection, and now you're happy. So double-edged sword, but I think the junk slab era is upon us, and it will continue to be upon us as PSA works through its backlog. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, they had an 8-figure backlog, so it only stands to reason that you're going to have millions of slabs out there right now. And again, like you say, a lot of people, they get their 10s and they can get big money for those, or they can keep them because, it's what I would call kind of manufactured rarity. I know that's a term used in other ways in the hobby, but essentially, when you take a look at some of these cards, and there's, many of these cards, there's literally tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of them printed, but only 120 PSA 10s. And we see that in the pop report all the time. So if you have one of those, well, then in my opinion, you have a 1 of 120, essentially, a card. So
for sure,
those certainly would have value, in my opinion, as long as it was a card that had some sort of demand. Even if you take like a 1987 Donruss Nolan Ryan in a PSA 10, I haven't looked at the PSA report, but I would guess it's probably measured less than 500. So if you like Nolan Ryan, that would be a card to me that would be something that you would be interested in. But like you said, there's tons of 7s and 8s. We've all received those back. And in my opinion, if you have several of them and it's not a card that you want to keep, you should sell that as quickly as you can, because there's only going to be more of them produced.
Yes.
Not cards getting produced more, but as people send those in to get graded. And again, that's all going to kind of flatten off too, because no one has sent in low value cards now for over a year. And once that backlog at PSA has been cleared, all of those are going to be out there that exist. And until that price goes down, people are not going to be sending those in to get graded either. So that there's going to be a little bit of a shift there, I think, as well. I mean, right now, you mentioned the Olajuwon card, and I'm going to say that you didn't mention the Jordan card, because both of us are holding tons and tons of those graded. And we certainly don't want to downplay the value of those, but there's been, there's a lot of those sitting at PSA still right now. And, anyone who wants one has one at this point.
Yes.
And, I think you look at the 10s, they're still going to hold value. The 9s are a little bit less than what they were selling for a year ago, but it hasn't gone down a lot. But those 8s and 7s and below, it's like, how many more of those are going to turn up? So many. But once we hit July, what's out there is what's going to be out there for a while, because people aren't going to send those in for $50 until PSA decides to drop the prices. And I think even then, you and I talked, I think it's going to be, you can submit 50 cards a month, something like that.
Yeah.
And people are only going to send in their best ones, and, they're going to be sending in higher dollar stuff, I think.
Yes. And I didn't use the Jordan as an example because I think people, even like, let's say PSA goes down to $25. I think people are still going to send in a Michael Jordan card. They're not going to send in a Hakeem Olajuwon. Like, so what you're saying is that Hakeem Olajuwon 1990 Fleer, which I did send a bunch of those in when it was $9 because I thought they were tens. And I looked at the return on my investment. I'm like, okay, I bought a box of these 90 Fleer. I have a couple cards here that I think are tens. I'm definitely going to sell and be able to get my money back if they're nines, but they come back eights or sevens. And it's just, now you're sitting on, but the Jordan cards, I think people will always have interest in getting graded. But, you're absolutely right about the leveling off. Nobody is going to send in a 1990 Hakeem Olajuwon probably ever again. I mean, let's be honest. Nobody is going to spend $25. You could probably get a 10 right now on there for $25.
Yep,
so
sure.
like those are the things so there's going to be a lot of junk slabs sitting around that, these cards are just, they're going to be in that dollar slot, like the dollar cards, 50 cents. Those are going to be slabs now. And those are going to be, $5. And that's just what we're going to get used to. And that's how people are going to get rid of their cards. And hopefully you run into people who like the card or like the players of the cards that you have. So you can, hopefully get a little bit of money back. But another thing I will say too about, where the state of the hobby is, that's what we're talking about. I will say this. I think numbered cards, autos, and PSA 10s are going to be kind of the kings of the hobby for the near and long-term future. I think those are the three things that will always be in vogue.
Agreed. I'd go with that as well. The other thing that I think has changed in collecting, again, you and I, had been out for almost 25 years and dropped back in the pandemic era. Yes, we're those people. eBay. When we were collecting, the Beckett was the Bible of the hobby, and you wanted to know how much something was worth, you went to Beckett. And I just remember going to card shows, and sometimes you'd go up to tables and they'd say priced at 50% Beckett or 75% Beckett or whatever it is. And now you hear the word comps all the time.
All the time.
They're eBay comps. But what's cool?
Last sales, right?
What's cool about that, and you saw it in basketball a lot last year, guy has a big night, his cards go through the roof, and things are not quite as responsive as they were a year ago.
No.
But you do have real-time pricing. And, back then, you'd go and pick up your June Beckett and on May 20th. But, I mean, that thing had to go to print, 3 or 4 weeks earlier. So now you literally have real time. And I think at that time, we didn't have the variations we have now, too. You talked about the numbered cards, which is cool, but there's so many color variations and so many different, refractors, and you've got different types of prisms, and you have all these things. And to me, it's just a research factor. I mean, I spend a lot of time on my phone, before my eyes shut every night, just like, geez, I didn't know that this type of prism was worth this and this type of prism is worth that. And it's just, there's just so much information out there now. And again, there's, articles, and there's so many awesome websites out there. We read Cardboard Connection all the time. There's, Sports Collector Daily and all these different places to get information where, 30 years ago, 25 years ago, if Beckett didn't write an article on it, then you didn't know about it. That was pretty much
right.
So
no, I agree with you 100%. That's one of the things that was on my list. People are more educated than ever, and the word comps and final, last sales and those type of things you hear all the time at card shows and in conversations and card shops. So everybody knows really what's going on, and I think that's just something that's you're not going to find people that are going to get bamboozled. I think that's the thing. And I think that's good for the hobby. Like, I feel like if you can be as educated when you're making an investment as possible, that's a positive. Another thing that I think is interesting about where the hobby is right now, the speculative market right now, I think is in overdrive. And I think I have a theory. I think, as the hobby gets younger, I think younger people are used to that rush of gambling and, getting that quick fix, whether it be, fantasy football or FanDuel or whatever the case may be. They're speculating that this person is going to have a outrageously successful career. We talked about like Spencer Torkelson, Anthony Volpe. Like, we've talked about these cards going for ridiculous amounts of money. Vladimir Guerrero selling for over $500,000 instead of investing in known commodities who have had well-established careers, who have, Hall of Fame careers, maybe have retired. They know that those cards aren't going to go, they're not going to fluctuate. They're not going to gamble on those cards. Those cards are going to stay at a certain level and maybe kind of creep up, right? So I think that's one of the things that's the hobby is going to have to endure, is a lot of ups and downs.
Yeah, we talk speculative market, though, in the six figures, 100,000, 500,000. But I think it lives in the $100 cards, too.
100%.
You can get a Volpe numbered card for under $100 right now if you're looking in the right thing. And I think people look at that and the average person can go and gamble that way and say, maybe this card at some point will be a $500 raw card and I'll get it graded. It'll be a $10,000 card or whatever it happens to be. But I think that speculative market, but that goes back. I invested in Gary Scott cards in 1990, and we had Greg Jeffries in 1989. We've always been speculating on cards. It's just different now.
Sure.
We didn't have numbered cards then, and we do now. So you kind of have an idea on a lot of these cards, how many that are out there. But people still love buying their, colored parallels and those kind of things as well. So, speculative market has been around forever and it will be around forever. It's just different now. And I guess that's the way, the whole point of this conversation is, where is the soul of the hobby? I guess my thing is it's good. If the headlines right now are, card shops are slowing down, values are going down. But if we go back to, late winter 2020, we go back to January 2020 compared to prices today, we're still 5, 6, 7, 8, 9x. It's still way up compared to what it was then. It's not what it was February 2021, where if you had a piece of cardboard, it was literally like holding gold, but it is still very, very good. And, if we were to take the values today and tell them to somebody in December of 2019, it'd be like, wow, that's very impressive.
Exactly. And I think one of the last things, this is my last comment on this topic is, and somebody mentioned this to me. They said, for young kids or young people, like, and he like held up a card. He said, this is their Monet. Like, this is art to them. Like, that's a piece of art, and they like to flaunt it and they like to show it off like a piece of art. I have this. You don't. This is mine. This is a unique thing that I own. And so I think cards are less about collecting, not for everyone, less about collecting what you really like and collecting what you think is valuable in a art type of thinking, when you're thinking about a piece of art. And so now, with that said, like art, people like taking that out and looking at it. There'll be times where I go and look through my cards and be like, oh, I forgot I had that card. That's a really cool card. And you kind of, it's just like you have a moment with your card. And I think more people are doing that. And so I think that's where the hobby is too. And, there's cards that where you look at and go, gosh, I can't get rid of this card. I can't get rid of it. And then all of a sudden somebody offers you a great price for it. And you're like, I can get rid of this card. So I think that's part of it too, is I think people do like looking at these cards because they are unique. The cards have become so cool and so unique and so different that I think that's what, that's what's drawing people back in as well.
Yeah. The Instagram flex.
Yeah. The Instagram flex. Got to do it for the gram. That's for sure. Hey, we're doing it for YouTube. We're doing it for our podcast. Hopefully people are enjoying this on the podcast if you're listening. We also have a YouTube page. The CardFellas, we're everywhere. We're trying to We're trying to, expand our reach and love. The best part about this, though, is hearing from people, sharing their stories. Some of them are similar. Hey, I'm getting back into this. We've gotten some comments from people saying, I'm thinking about sending my cards in for grading. So there's some people, too, that are like just getting to where we were a couple of years ago, back in the hobby, trying to figure it all out. So I love to hear those stories. And it just reminds you, again, that the hobby is good. It continues to grow. Yes, it's slowing a little bit when it comes to number of sales, how quickly things sell, for how much they sell. But overall, I say the strength of the hobby is still looking good.
Yeah, and one of the things that's helping, especially in the baseball market, is Wander Franco, and that's what we wanted to talk about next.
Yeah, I wanted to touch base on a card we talked a little bit about. We talked about it briefly, and I'm going to let you take this away because you really brought this to my attention. It was the 2022 Topps Wander Franco Future Stars Club card. And when you told me about this card, Chris, I was like, huh? I haven't heard of this card. What is this card? And you explained. And before we go any further, tell us a little bit more about what this card is all about, if you can remind us.
Yeah.
How you got it, what it's all about.
We talked a little bit about it on a previous show, but the Topps Future Stars Club signed my son up about a year ago because we couldn't find retail product. And this was the thing. You were going to get something sent to you once a month. You were going to get a box of cards, some sort of pack. It's always been a retail box, or always been a blaster box up until this last month. And you're going to get a 5-card set, and then you're going to get another collectible. And sometimes that's like we've gotten souvenir, like mini helmets. We've gotten a Christmas ornament. I mean, we just get all kinds of different stuff. I'll just look kind of like tchotchke type items. In the past, I talked about this blaster box coming, and those 5-card sets were star cards. You'd get the Mike Trouts and the Ohtani cards, and sometimes you'd get some kind of Kirby Puckett kind of guys. But in this last month's box, we got the pack was this 50-card team set of a Italian soccer club, which had no interest to us whatsoever. And I actually have already sold it on eBay. Somebody did pay me $25 for that. So that was cool.
There you go.
But we also, in the 5-card set, was all rookies this month. And there's a Wander Franco card in there. And you and I were kind of speculating about how rare this card is. And by the way, this whole program is $25 a month and free shipping. So you're $25 in for everything.
So let me. Was it targeted towards kids?
Yeah, Topps Future Stars. So it's kind of a kid's box. I mean, a lot of the YouTube people are getting them, and there's obviously no way for Topps to be able to go,
sure,
yeah, this is a kid. Jabs does an opening every month on this. There's lots of other YouTubers that are doing it. We've put a few on our channel as well. But yeah, there's no way for them to know that it was a kid, but it was just a way I think Topps was trying to grow the hobby and just to ensure that if a kid wanted to get cards and was willing to invest $25 a month, you're going to get cards once a month. So that was kind of the idea behind it. And, it feels like this month with that rookie set and getting that Franco card that we actually got something that may be kind of rare and valuable.
And that's what I wanted to talk about. That's why I wanted to bring it back. So when you presented this to me and our listeners, it got me thinking and it got us talking. How many of these are produced? How many are out there? How many people were like, we don't know that. And so you were talking about possibly selling that card. I think I offered you $40 for it. You said no. And I think that's a smart move. Here's why. So I think this card has potential to be one of those low pop Wander Franco cards that come, a couple of years, maybe it doesn't even take that long. You figure out, boy, there weren't that many of these cards produced, and they become a really valuable card for anybody looking for Wander Franco. And if you've followed baseball this year, Wander Franco looks to be the real deal. And so he's created more buzz in baseball. You and I have kind of kind of. I don't know if we want to compare them yet, but like the buzz is similar to what we saw in '89 with Ken Griffey Jr. So he has taken the hobby over by storm. And so if you can find a card that's not numbered, that you can get relatively cheap, that we don't know how many were produced, now's the time to buy that. And here's what I've done is I've gone on eBay ever since Chris declined my offer to buy the card. I went on eBay searching for this card, and here's what I've found. 20 of them have been sold. So when you go into the solds, that's how many are there. When you go on the currently for sale, there are 2. So there's 22 of these cards right now that have been working its way through eBay, either sold or for sale. Now they've been selling for anywhere between $40 and $50. And the 2 that are for sale right now are selling for like 80 and 90. So some people are, have it a little bit higher than what they're going for. Those numbers intrigue you at all, Chris?
Yeah, I think they're very intriguing. I think that low, that 22 number is what's exciting. Because if you put in 2022 Topps Wander Franco rookie card and you push the sold button, there's been over 17,000 listings sold with that title. That could be, maybe somebody put in a few packs and wrote Topps Wander Franco rookie card, and that definitely does happen. But the reality is there's literally been thousands and thousands of the standard base card that have changed hands.
Yes.
And, how many of these have gone out in these Future Stars boxes? I'm going to guess that it's less than 20,000. And the other thing that happens with these too, my son obviously has a dad who's really into cards and really enjoys them and knows what to do when you see something that could be potentially valuable. But how many of these just show up in a kid's mailbox and mom or dad throws the box and goes, "Oh, your cards are here," and just kind of throws the box at them, and then they end up getting handled poorly or traded to somebody else who handles them poorly. But I really think this card could be an incredible gem, and Franco continues to do what he's doing. I just, when I saw him this spring, I went, man, we haven't had somebody like this since Ken Griffey Jr.
Yeah, this could be a sneaky low pop. That's not. It's not a short print. It's not numbered, so we're not saying that this compares to some of those numbered short print cards. But it's just one of those cards that we just don't know how many are out there. And this was released in March, and so in 22 in a month, when you're looking at the number of Wander Franco cards flying around, that got me intrigued. I own 3 of them now, Chris. Because of you, I purchased 3 on eBay.
So now we know where 3 of the 20 have gone.
And I can tell you this, none of them have been graded yet. I have not received any of them yet. And the reason I wanted to talk about this on the show was because our habits really should drive the content of this show. And I want to be transparent. Yes, I've purchased 3 of these cards. So 3 of the 22 that we're talking about on eBay have been purchased by me. So I'm hopeful, and I'm not trying to manipulate the market. I'm trying to tell people before, this starts to happen, because I'm not going to sell mine. I'm going to look at, see if they're well centered. I'm going to get them graded eventually, and they're going to be low pops. And so I'm not trying to manipulate the market. I'm just trying to, we're trying to share what we see, and these are the conversations we have offline that we want to bring to the people. So I'd love to hear people's opinion on this card, what they think, because I think this is something, once you dig into it, like you said, and I give you credit for bringing this to our attention. Once you dig into it, you look at it and go, gosh, could this be? I know you're saying 20,000, but like, man, what if it's not? What if it's we have no idea. We have no clue. Yeah. So I think it's an intriguing card nonetheless, where I'm a buyer. I'm still buying, and I'm looking. I'm not the 2 that are for sale right now for 80 and 90. I'm passing on. That's a little bit too rich for my blood, but I was getting them for 45 a piece. and it ended up being about 50 to 55 with the tax and shipping. But I'm okay with that because I think these cards are going to at least hold that value just because of how good he is, or potentially, really increase in value.
A numbered Franco is going to cost you way more than that. And
I agree.
That's something that you're going to be in that pop report. Definitely could be less than a numbered Franco, especially out of 2022. This is going to be less than I think for pop report. And I can tell you, just in our house, when that box comes, my kid pulls the blaster box out and could care less what happens to the other stuff.
Yeah.
So
he just wants to rip wax, right?
He wants to rip wax, and that 5-card set is an afterthought in our house. And full disclosure, my son doesn't know about it.
Oh no!
Not that I'm going to sell it, because he's going to get all this stuff someday soon, or not. Hopefully not someday soon.
I was going to say, geez,
someday.
Everything so.
So
breaking news. So yes, and I appreciate you not selling that to me, because if this card didn't end up taking off, you'd have that over my head for many years to come. And so good job, Dad, for holding on that one for Junior's college fund, and hopefully it does pay for a semester of college eventually.
I do pay his Top Future Star subscription fees.
You do own it, technically, right?
It's not like it's not like I stole from him.
Well, this was a good conversation. Our shorty went a little longy today, but I think it was a good, fun conversation. And if you want to chime in, leave a comment. Let us know what you think about the hobby, where it is, and also this Wander card. If you're listening on the podcast, go to our YouTube page, search for CardFellas. We're on there too. And if you're watching us on YouTube, go to wherever you get your podcasts. We're there too. Talking hobby, talking cards, and we'll be back with another shorty coming up here soon. I think we should talk about the NFL draft and just kind of the putrid quarterbacks in this year's draft, according to draft experts, and what that could look like in the NFL and for collecting, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about card shows too. You and I have been to our fair share, so we got some fun stuff coming on. Hopefully people enjoy this.
It'll be a great next show, so we'll talk about all that stuff. And the other thing I'd like to ask, I guess, from the people who are listening, go and give us a review, especially if it's a 5-star review. It helps us get new listeners. We are a brand new show. We are growing, which is pretty exciting. But having those reviews really helps us out a lot. So if you can do that, that would help us. Hope you guys are enjoying it. For Matt, I'm Chris. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We will see you next time.